Now, with me for the duration of the show is my all-star panel, and they are truly marvellous tonight. Former Liberal Democrat MP, Lembit Opik, political commentator and freelance writer Sam Lewis, and comedian Francis Foster. Folks, great to have you on the show. Lembit, you've had COVID, and I think you were quite shocked by the symptoms that you went through.
It was terrible. I had it, and I thought, how bad can it be? Answer is really, really bad. I nearly got hospitalised, and once you get down that path, you're close to death. Let's not beat around the bush. I recovered after having lost 10 kilos, which is just about the only positive from it. And I actually lost part of my sight for a while as well, briefly.
Oh, gosh.
It was really, really bad. But I've recovered now, and you said something really interesting. Nature's vaccine. I have every belief that across the hundreds of millions of years that we've had fairly advanced life on this planet, we've kind of worked out a relationship with viruses and bacteria, which means there is no better solution than nature. Don't belittle the benefit of vaccines, and actually the speed at which those vaccines are being created is pretty impressive. But as you said, if you've got natural immunity, and I guess we could test that in people, that's got to be worth some kind of freedom and some kind of a reward as well. And that's not what we're doing.
Sam Lewis, a very warm welcome to GB News and Tonight Live. I promise to make it fun. What do you think about my concern that politicians and maybe a generation of scientists are sort of hell-bent on getting all of us vaccinated?
Look, I think that since early childhood, I've had multiple vaccines. Vaccination is something that is normal, and it should be normal. And I'm not necessarily against scientists coming up with these new vaccines that we should all get. I mean, recently I read something about, in The Economist recently, they talked about potentially even creating vaccines against any future potential issues which we won't know, or any future viruses that we don't even know come into existence. But I think that we should listen to the scientists on this. And, for example, I was vaccinated and lucky to get it very early on. And once you get vaccinated, you can go out and enjoy yourselves a bit more. And that's why I think it's important to get it.
Francis, what can we read into about this decision not to vaccinate 12 to 15-year-olds? Is this a slight sort of shift from the kind of key scientific voices advising the government?
I'll be honest with you, Mark, I found it very heartwarming because we've heard the phrase "follow the science" being used again and again and again, even when the government actually haven't been following the science. Like, for instance, when they banned public protests, when the science said that it is highly unlikely that COVID can be transmitted outdoors. So the fact that the JCVI have actually given forth this recommendation shows to me that maybe we're actually following the science and not bowing to political pressure from different sides of this argument in wanting to get these children vaccinated.
I just don't agree with that, though, because my daughter, Angelina Levy, she had COVID same time as I did. No symptoms at all. She was 3. No symptoms at all. It would have been balmy to give her a vaccination. And back to this natural thing. Somehow the human race has been around probably 100,000 years. We've learned to live with viruses which has been around for billions of years. When you start vaccinating at too young an age, I actually think we're monkeying with nature in a really dangerous way. It makes your body lazy. That's what I think happens. So, yeah, I'm glad I've had the vaccinations, even though I had the disease. But to give my 3-year-old that kind of a vaccine, way wrong answer, because at that point, we're probably making them more vulnerable in the longer term. I'm not an epidemiologist any more than Prince Harry, but I do not want a jab in my daughter's arm when she showed no symptoms in the first place.
Sam, briefly, if you can, what are your thoughts about the extension of the Coronavirus Act for another 6 months? The Lib Dems will fight against it. Some of the COVID recovery group of Tory backbenchers. What's your view?
I think it's important that we keep this all in perspective. The Spanish flu, even though we only hear it lasting for 2 or 3 years, went on for about 10 years. And we do need to take into account that there could be future waves and that we have to potentially put in placements again. We need to bring the law back to lockdowns potentially if the NHS is overwhelmed. So I'm not against it at all.
What's your view? gbviews@gbnews.uk. Well, there you go. Got some more front pages for you coming very shortly, but I've also got a rather impressive panel with me tonight, which is very, very exciting. We have former Liberal Democrat MP, but there's so much more to him than that. broadcaster, raconteur, writer, campaigner, Lembit Opik. And he's a libertarian, by the way, not a liberal. Got to get that right. Political commentator, brand new to GB News and The Show, freelance writer Sam Lewis, and comedian, good friend of mine, trigonometry co-host Francis Foster. So let's talk about that immoral leak. That's how the Mirror are describing it, of the official plans for the immediate aftermath of the Queen's death, codenamed London Bridge. Well, that leak's being investigated by the Cabinet Office. The detailed government master plan has long been circulated among senior political figures and civil servants. But both royal and political aides were said to be angry after elements were published by the Politico website, especially when the Queen, who remarkably is 95 years of age, does not look it, is in such good health, and barely 5 months, of course, since her husband, the Duke of Edinburgh, sadly died. The plans have been updated in the light of the pandemic, and government departments have also raised concerns about the management of huge crowds in a bid to avoid travel chaos and worries that London could become full. The leak also reveals the first person outside Buckingham Palace to be told the sad news will be the Prime Minister, setting off 10 days of official events, including the accession to the throne of Prince Charles, culminating in a state funeral. I think you'll agree, this is all in very poor taste. I actually read these words with a heavy heart, frankly, but let me finish. The plans cover every eventuality, from how the Queen's coffin will be transported to London if she dies outside the capital, to the specific wording of notifications sent by the departmental permanent secretaries tasked with breaking the news. The document's understood to be a few months out of date, but even so, isn't this leak just a bit distasteful, Francis?
I mean, it's not particularly pleasant. I think the most worrying thing about the leak is how was it leaked? This is obviously a confidential document. This is obviously a very important document. Who did it and why did they do it? And it shows that somewhere in the system there is a breach, and that's the most worrying aspect out of all of this for me.
I agree. Almost a national security concern there, Lembit.
There's a bit of an irony, though. The front page splash, how could they, in the Mirror, and then they report it.
Well said, and that's
Come
why.
on.
And I'm guilty of hypocrisy, because as I read the words, I thought, I feel guilty talking. I don't want to discuss coffins and funeral arrangements for the Queen. She's still alive and kicking.
There are two parts to this that bother me. My mother died, as you know, some weeks ago.
I'm really sorry for your loss.
Not tragic, but very sad for me.
Very tough.
She organised her own funeral arrangements, and so it was easier for us to deal with it. But we didn't splash the details around the family before it happened.
Yeah, and not in front of her, right?
Well, she didn't really mind because she did it, but we didn't go planning it and saying... The difference here is, this is that she willingly trying to make it easier for us by planning it. This, I suspect, is not a leak prepared by the Queen. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, I don't want to know that after 10 days, we all go back to business as usual. I'm not back to business as usual with my mum. And the royal family, they've got the right to feel respected as well. And if I was to read this about my mum, I'd be pretty livid. So I actually think this is one time the media should have left it alone. Fair play to you. Didn't feel too comfortable about doing it. To me, this is one of the reasons why some people simply don't respect the British media.
Well, actually, Sam, perhaps we should have dropped the item here at GB News. Perhaps I shouldn't have done it today. And perhaps the website that published this leaked report should have just sat on it, because there's very little to be gained from having this conversation out loud, is there?
I think it's certainly distasteful that it's come out in
Not in
this
the
way.
national interest, is it?
It's not in the national interest, but at the same time, this is our monarch. We know all the ceremonial duties that take place. It is important there's some transparency about what will happen. I personally think that if we know that there are 10 days of mourning and that this process will take 10 days, you won't get as many idiots like happened after Prince Philip passed away who start complaining that, the airwaves are completely full of all this stuff that I don't want to see because we didn't realise that it was going to go on for a few days. But I think if we know that there are 10 days where we can set aside time to think about the Queen and respectfully show our what we believe about her and the good she did, then I think this could be a good thing.
Yes, and actually I think the best compromise is now to move swiftly on, and also to say that I'm confident that the Queen will be with us for a long, long time to come, and we all wish her well. She's quite the most remarkable human being. People who steal pets could be sent to prison for 7 years under new government plans to tackle dog thefts. New legislation will make stealing a pet a specific offence, and the government hopes that this will make it easier for officers to track incidents and harder for thieves to actually steal and sell pets. There's been, wait for it, this is an astonishing stat, A 250% rise in dog thefts driven by the pandemic as people spent more time at home and demand for puppies absolutely soared. Prices for some breeds rose by up to 89%, making stealing them more profitable and prompting a public outcry for tougher laws. Pet theft is currently classed as a loss of property. Can you imagine? But for pet owners who consider their furry friends part of the family, that doesn't go far enough. The new law will take into account the emotional distress caused to the animal, as well as acknowledging that a stolen pet is far more than just the loss of property to its owners. So I would have thought this is the right thing to do, to properly criminalise pet theft. Don't you think, Sam?
Oh, absolutely. I think that, I only had rabbits when I was younger, but I was absolutely distraught when they were taken away by foxes. But
how many did you have, by the way? Did you get through a few before you gave up?
There was a few, and then they had babies, so there was about 10 times more.
But the foxes managed to kind of control that population a bit.
Yeah, there's a bit of natural selection there. But I think that in this case, you do form an attachment, and I think that it's an important part of growing up for a lot of children, but also for families. I mean, in divorce suits, you often get the couple debating over who should get the dog. And I think that this just shows, and this is a good policy, because I think it is important to a lot of people, and this is what it shows.
There are some particularly nasty crimes, and one of them is to steal a pet, don't you think, Lembit?
Yeah, up to point. Sam tempts me to go into the old fox hunting debate. I'm not going there. I'm not going to go there, but I can be tempted.
Are you pro or anti fox hunting?
I was in favour of something called the middle way, which was about unnecessary suffering. In other words, we should ban unnecessary suffering. And there's a big debate because you can actually argue that banning fox hunting increased suffering because shooting wasn't an all or nothing thing, though, with hounds, either the fox was dead or not.
Yeah.
And actually, this is an interesting point about proportionality here. 7 years is a pretty big sentence for this. And I have to say I agree with Sam in terms of the fact it's horrendous. I remember how I loved our cats, and I'd like to think this legislation applies to all pets, not just to dogs. But the issue here is we are becoming quite a draconian state. And the bit that I wrestle with is, what is proportionate here? Now, I don't know the answer exactly. We could just give a life sentence to everything, I suppose. And that's the part that I'm not sure about. So in principle, I agree with it. Whether this is too much, I suspect, is a different question. If I was 6 or 8 years old and somebody stole our cat, I would be utterly devastated for the reasons that you say, Sam. A pet is part of the family.
But it's not akin to, God forbid, child kidnap or abduction or something like that.
Which do actually, I'd like to think, have higher sentences. I'm not really au fait with the exact sentencing regime. But here's a conundrum, and maybe Francis can answer this because I can't. Should it be a higher sentence for stealing a horse than a cat? And what about a goldfish?
Yeah, do it by weight.
Yeah, where do you draw the line?
Or is it more for a mammal, you know?
Good to see that I prepared adequately. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
You're basically like our kind of token brain box tonight. So
well, yeah, I've been miscast in the role, Mark. I hate to break it to you, mate. I will say this, though. There's actually gangs that specialise in this type of illegal activity. And they steal primarily dogs, primarily pedigree dogs. But the worrying thing is as well, is that if they can't sell them, then they then sell them on to dog fighting and things and activities like this. So I think what's really important here is you target the organised crime element. There's a tendency to trivialise this and say, oh, it's just a cat, oh, it's just someone swiped a dog. But these are actually organised gangs who create misery for hundreds, if not thousands, of people across the country.
And, of course, misery and peril for the animals as well. Welcome back to Tonight Live. More on the Media Buzz right now with my panel, Lembit Opik, Sam Lewis and Francis Foster. Can a relationship rooted in infidelity work? Well, maybe it can for Matt Hancock, former Health Secretary, and Gina Colo-D'Angelo. The ex-Health Secretary has reportedly taken his partner on a romantic £87 a night Alpine holiday, their first couples trip since the revelation of their affair. There you go. The Express have got the exclusive. The look that says, we're very much together. Not sure about that baseball cap, but there you go. Pictures show the pair heading out for dinner with friends while staying at the Villas Mountain Lodge, which describes itself as resolutely modern and at the same time delightfully authentic, exactly how I would describe Matt Hancock. This will be Matt Hancock's second holiday in as many weeks after he was previously spotted hitting the surf in Cornwall with his children last month. Friends of the couple have insisted that the affair began in May, the same month that Matt Hancock and Miss Colo D'Angelo were caught in incriminating CCTV footage that none of us will ever unsee. But others say the pair, who have known each other since university days, have had something going on since 2019. Well, here's the question, Francis. Can you base a relationship on infidelity? Because they both did the dirty on their respective partners. Is that the foundation for a relationship?
I didn't realise I was a relationship expert, Mark. Thank you.
Yeah, we got you sorting out the judicial system in relation to pet theft, and now emotional counselling, please.
Emotional counselling on the love life of Matt Hancock.
Yeah. Later,
right.
by the way, we're going to get you to explain gravity in great detail.
Later on, Mark, I'm going to fire my agent. But anyway, so we're here. No, can it? I don't know. Look, if they're happy together, I suppose it can work. I mean, but who can really trust Matt Hancock? Number one, he wears a baseball cap. Mate, you're bald. Just accept it. Get on with it. Don't trust a man who hides a thinning scalp under a baseball cap. And you're English, mate. We don't wear baseball caps.
Sam, I think it's wrong to make moral judgments because we're all human beings. We all make mistakes. And, of course, you don't really choose who you fall in love with. But you always have to wonder, don't you, as they sort of pursue this relationship, or anyone in that situation, you think, well, wait a minute, you say you love me, but you were disloyal to your previous partner. And that's maybe a seed of doubt for both of them.
Well, look, as important as the points that Francis made were, the fact is that...
Really?
from personal experience, if you go into a relationship with someone that was disloyal to their previous relationship, then why do you expect it to be the same for you? That's my personal opinion on it. It just seems a bit illogical to think that suddenly they're going to be 100% for you. There's always someone better out there, right? A better looking person, someone with more money, someone who's probably funnier, maybe someone with all three.
Thoughts that Mrs. Dolan has intermittently on a daily basis. Lembit,
Well,
infidelity, are we being a little bit Puritan about this?
I've got a confession here. I've never worn a baseball cap, so I'm not completely qualified to comment on that.
Glad to hear it. Well, why would you hide that silvery mane?
Oh, very nicely put. But I feel slightly infidelity-driven there to respond. So let's not talk about our romance here on air. But let me tell you this. My judgment is that love is a verb. It's a choice. It's an action step. As Sam says, if you meet all 7.5 billion people in the world, it's just possible you're going to find someone better than the person you're with. Some people that affects, and other people it doesn't. We are not here to judge the innards of somebody else's personal relationship. I would say if you're only allowed to have one relationship in your life, then there'll be far more miserable people than there are today. The one thing I would say about Matt Hancock, I happen to know him and also his current partner, they're both pretty nice people in real life. Whatever you think about him as a politician or her as his partner, I really, really rail against us slamming politicians or anybody else if they haven't preached about somebody else's life. And to the best of my knowledge, neither Matt nor Gina are guilty of that hypocrisy. So leave them alone. Let them get on with their work, their personal lives and their work as well. The one thing Matt did wrong was tell us to do one thing and then do another. That's my professional complaint about him, because it damages the credibility of the instructions we were given about, for example, social distancing. But can their love work? Yeah, and I hope that it does. The best thing about what he's been doing the weeks before that, he seems to have had some rapprochement with his kids. And I think that's really important too. And I just hope that he finds an accommodation that works for everybody. And surely you do too, Mark.
Well, I do. In fact, I would stand up and applaud that, but I'd be out of shot. But I do agree with every word you said, Lembit. I'm so excited because Lembit, Sam and Francis are with me till midnight, and we've got some real treats in store. Sam?
I personally think that there's so much self-righteousness within politics that I don't even want to get into it, because the hypocrisy is just, there's so much of it. When Greta Thunberg decided to, make people get her a boat so she could go across that to fly people across. And this sort of stuff is just, I'd like to know when the turning point was 10, 12 years ago or before. I'd like to know what you think, Paddy. Like, when was this turning point, this self-righteousness sort of became mainstream and all politicians took it up? Or do you think it's always been like that?
Well, there's always been a level of it, but I think it is accelerated in the kind of social media age. I mean, I don't necessarily think the rise of social media is in and of itself automatically a problem, but we are in this situation now where literally just posting a picture of yourself with an electric car or whatever it might be seems to be enough for a politician to show that they are committed to the green agenda, whatever it might be. They don't actually have to abide by those principles in their lives. So I think that certainly has something to do with it. But the kind of craziness of modern environmentalism, I think, has really accelerated in the last few decades. We had a kind of panic in the 90s, early noughties. Things went a bit quiet, and now in the UK, it's gone completely crazy with Extinction Rebellion again. So I think there's a lot of different trends that go into this, depending on which particular manifestation it has. But also, there is just an extent to which, the elites these days are more distant from the public than they've ever been, and more arrogant and more refusing to listen to the public, perhaps, than they've ever been. And that's
The mayor of Helsinki has suggested that the Finnish capital declare itself an English language city after suggestions that too many highly skilled foreigners ignore and shun the city due to the difficult language. Finland's two main official languages are Finnish, which has 15 grammatical cases and is notoriously difficult for foreigners to learn, and Swedish, with public sector workers expected to learn both. And a serious shortage of professionals last year prompted the country to try offering foreign workers and their families the chance to relocate to Finland for 90 days to see if they'd like to make the move permanent. But more than 36% of foreign students in Finland left within a year of graduation, according to government figures, with most blaming immigration bureaucracy, high taxation and language difficulties. To attract more highly skilled foreign professionals, Helsinki's mayor suggested the capital should expand its English language education in kindergartens and primary schools and essentially declare Helsinki an English city. It's almost like the return of the empire, isn't it? But this time they chose for it to be that way. Now, Francis, English, best language in the world.
Correct.
It's a no-brainer for Finland, isn't it?
It is absolutely a no-brainer for Finland. English is the language of business. It will facilitate them being able to attract more people to come over, to stay there. You've got to do something when you're struggling to attract and to keep people to stay in your country.
Yeah.
And I think that's
Do you
that's
think,
the
do you
right
think
move.
we should take up English in this country? See how it goes.
Well, certainly in South London, Mark.
Yeah, because certainly if you look at text speak, I mean, my teenage son, he definitely speaks his own language, Lembit.
Minä osaan eesti rääkida. That's Estonian, almost Finnish.
And I believe you just swore at me.
I didn't actually. I said I can speak Estonian.
That's rather impressive. You're half Estonian, is
I'm
that right?
100% Estonian. Both
blimey.
parents, mother and father. I qualify for Estonian citizenship. And Estonian and Finnish are dialects, more or less, of the same language. So this desire to have English spoken in Helsinki, the idea is dead to me. I don't need it.
Yeah.
But I do understand why they're saying it, because it's an incredibly difficult language. What I love about what Juhana Vartiainen, that's the name of the mayor that you dared not mention.
No, that's right. I stepped away from that one.
He is being smart, but actually the truth is most people in Finland can already speak English.
Yes.
I think that if he wants to attract more people to stay there, he needs to improve the weather. You think you've got it bad here. You go to Finland in winter time and the sun barely comes above the horizon. But it is...
Well, yeah, that's right. I mean, how many hours of sunlight would you get in let's say, January in Finland?
About 3 or 4. But if it's really overcast, it barely gets light and then it gets dark again. And it's people say that I've been anglicised because I smile sometimes in the winter, and that is a change. But I do think that, in answer to your question, it's a really interesting thing, which languages matter. Another nationality, you could say, I mentioned it here before, is Asgardian, the world's first space nation.
Yes.
And we actually have 12 official terrestrial languages, your Earth languages, because we recognise that you have to recognise different cultures. There's never going to be just one language for everybody. So I think it's a fairly pragmatic decision.
Are you sure that there won't be? With the internet and with the world shrinking, do you not think that leaders will get together and just settle on a language? It could be Mandarin, it could be... I mean, I'm thinking that the best options would be English, Spanish, Mandarin or Arabic.
And you think it's prescriptive to get people to take COVID injections. I'm sure Sam doesn't agree with what you're saying. They tried Esperanto, didn't go down too well.
What was the story? What's the story around Esperanto?
Esperanto was an artificial language that was created to try and bring the whole world together. Some people learned it, but it never really caught on.
Sort of 100, 200 years ago?
No, it was less than that. Maybe I think it was about 80 years ago. Could be wrong about that. Ascardia hopes to have its own language, but in reality, you've got 12 languages. And if you had to learn 3 languages to get around in the world, English, Spanish, Chinese, you'd be doing pretty well.
Pretty well. You'd cover most of the globe.
But if I had to choose one language, of course, it would be Estonian. That would give me an inherent advantage in any job interview.
When I'm abroad, Sam, I feel bad speaking English, especially when the locals in Scandinavia do speak better English than probably most of us do. You know, it's remarkable. But it does feel a little bit imperialist when to just speak English in a foreign country.
No, I don't think so. I think, for example, I lived in China for a bit and everyone's trying to come up and practice their English. But, I mean, part of the fun, I think, of going to foreign countries when I go on holiday is that, you spend half the time doing hand gestures the whole time because you're trying to figure out what each other is saying. And I think that, if you move to a country, you should learn the local language because that's how you get to know the people. If you speak a language somebody knows and understands in their brain, then sure, you'll get along. But if you speak what's in their heart, if you speak their actual home language, then you'll have business opportunities, friendships that will last a lot longer.
People really love it when you make the effort to speak a few words in a foreign language, even if it's just hello and thank you. It's just that the worst thing is when we, and I've done it myself, you're abroad and you say thank you and hello to the waiter or waitress, and you can just say bonjour and merci and you've met them halfway. But, however, I mean, smaller languages can't survive in the long run, can they?
I think they can, absolutely, as long as there are the people trying to keep it alive. I mean, we still have Gaelic in Scotland and in Ireland they're trying to bring.
But if the Prime Minister, I mean, we heard from the Mayor there, but if the Prime Minister of Finland said to the Finnish people, look, if we go completely English, our GDP will increase by 5% for the next 10 years. You'll be rolling in money. You'll have a flood of inward investment. You'll have, Americans and Brits and other English-speaking people coming to our country, having families, generating growth.
They might be saying that for Chinese rather than English soon enough, unfortunately. So.
Well, you do wonder about that.
Chinese.
If we had to settle on one language, Francis, I mean, obviously English would be selfishly our preferred option, but it would certainly have to be one of the languages that doesn't have different genders for now.
It'd have to be English because there's no way anybody in England would learn another language.
It's true.
There's no option. It'd have to be English. Can you imagine if Mandarin was the language in this country brought in? In 60, 80 years, people would still be wandering into a restaurant, pointing at symbols and going, is this a Lambuna, mate? Is that what this one is? Can I have that? What's Heineken? This. It just wouldn't work.
Number 3, a number 7 and a number 47.
Yeah, exactly. And then you'd get given whatever it is and you'd get angry because it's not what you wanted. And then you'd shout at them so they'd understand it better.
Well said. I tell you what, this is like a kind of perfect traveller's guide.
It is.
Thanks to Francis Foster. You're going to do a travel show soon. I look forward to watching that. After the break, the Super Troopers are back. But will they save 2021 for you? Yeah, we're going to talk about ABBA. We've got lots more as well, including my panel's nominations for their Greatest Britain and Union Jackass. See you in a sec. Now, with me still to reflect on tomorrow's headlines are my brilliant panel, who are going to nominate their Greatest Britain and Union Jackass as well. Francis Foster, Lembit Opik and Sam Lewis. Another group of anti-vax protesters scuffled with police today as they tried to storm the London offices of Britain's medicine regulator. The chaotic scenes show the official Voice protesters battling with officers as they tried to make their way through the doors of the MHRA's headquarters. A line of Scotland Yard officers guarded the entrance to the building in Canary Wharf to prevent hundreds of demonstrators getting inside. Ex-Coronation Street actor Sean Ward was also arrested at the protest, with footage capturing the moment. There we are. Well, look, lots of demonstrations happening there. We'll keep you updated on that story as it develops. But now let's talk about ABBA. The Super Troopers are back, and they're better and younger than ever. Amazing. Miraculous. Can't believe it's happening, folks.
Your tour. Haven't been out there for 40 years, and you
The Swedish quartet yesterday released Don't Shut Me Down. Is that an anti-lockdown tune? And I Still Have Faith in You. The first two singles from their new album, Voyage, in nearly 40 years. Bjorn and Benny made the historic announcement in London yesterday and unveiled the first look at the Voyage digital concert, which will see extraordinarily detailed holograms based on movements recorded by the band as they take to the stage to perform their hits. The news has been met with excitement from fans across the world who said the band were back to their best and had swooped in to rescue them after a difficult 18 months. The bank said in a the band, they are a bank now, that's how rich they are. The band said in a statement, "We took a break in the spring of 1982, and now we've decided it's time to end it." So, Francis, have ABBA saved 2021?
No. Absolutely not. No.
You're mired in late 60s English rock.
Yeah, look, there's been many disastrous things to happen to this country in the last 18 months. This is up there as far as I'm concerned. I don't ever want to hear Dancing Queen ever again. Dreadful.
Dancing Queen.
I don't want to hear it.
I love ABBA.
Well,
Dancing Queen is the only ABBA song I don't like.
yeah.
And
It's because it's diabolical.
Annoying, that particular track. Maybe it's been overplayed. But, Sam, ABBA fan?
I mean, when I'm at karaoke, yeah, but most of the time I'm not really. It's not my go-to tune.
150 million records worldwide. ABBA changed the world.
I don't deny that.
Maybe you're the wrong generation because you weren't there at the time.
Yeah.
Lembit?
Very true. Lembit, what about you?
I don't think you were there either.
I was. I had.
Wait, how old were you when they were big?
I was
7.
About 8, yes. But they carried on being great into my teens. And they had the audacity to make one of their first albums called ABBA Greatest Hits. That was one of their first albums. And Francis can say that he's against it and doesn't like ABBA, but frankly, the winner takes it all. And on this occasion, he's just met his Waterloo. See what I did there?
Nicely done.
I love the fact that ABBA's back. It's a good news story. And you're a curmudgeon. You're an English curmudgeon.
No.
Jealous of the fact that they speak better English than many people in this country. And they had a secret. Their harmonies were designed in a certain way that can almost not be recreated. So for me, they represent the epitome of pop. And I feel sorry for you that you weren't there at the time, but now you get the chance to relive my early days. So
Wow.
congratulations.
Yeah, we're going to
He
make
looks delighted, Emily.
Do we have an audio of the actual songs?
Well, I mean, I could sing a few if you like. I mean, I won't
Lembit,
because
that's
I want
what
to
he
keep,
wants
my many viewers.
Okay.
My favourite ABBA song is Take a Chance on Me. Because what's amazing about ABBA, not just the simplicity and innocence of their lyrics, but great innovation in production as well. Lots of sort of overdubs and very, very creative band, very inventive. And by the way, remarkable to have all those hits written in English, which is not their mother tongue.
They're regarded as two of the greatest songwriters in the history.
And they wrote their songs in another language.
They did, and they all spoke pretty good English, and they married each other. It was a dream story. They were perhaps them, and I would say also Led Zeppelin, and maybe The Who, they were the first supergroups in the world. So even if it's not your music, you've got to admire the fact that they changed music forever. And one of the very few absolutely long-lasting bands to come out of the Eurovision Song Contest.
Yes, and also there is a bit of snobbery about so-called Europop, pop music from outside America and the UK. And actually, there are very few examples of any sort of success globally for a European band. So they're out there, aren't they, on their own, really?
Kind of proves what Francis said about English before. If they'd done it all in Swedish, or dare I say it, Finnish, it wouldn't have been quite so successful. They played it beautifully by having Swedo-English. And we all understood it. And that was the amazing thing.
And also, don't you think the innocence as well? The innocence of their lyrics, it was about kind of boy meets girl, boy...
At the age of 8 or 10, there was nothing to be offended by what they played. And actually, some of it was biographical. That song I mentioned, Winner Takes It All, was about the breakup of one of the marriages, actually. SOS again. When you're 15, it tells a bit like 10cc, it tells the story of teenage angst. So I hope that my friends here, Sam and Francis, will discover ABBA.
Well, do you know what? Unapologetically cheesy.
Yes, yeah, and that's what pop is. It's successful for a reason. It's accessible. It's easy. It's like a burger. It's very easy.
It's like I always think it's like the Madonna song like a virgin. It's sort of well-crafted rubbish.
Yeah, and maybe they'll be touched for the very first time by this music.
Definition of the 70s.
Yeah, I fear a lot of it.
You're not feeling it at all.
I've got an amusing email from Declan who has said, Lembit, he doesn't sound Estonian, he sounds more Etonian.
Oh, that ties into something that was once said. There are more Estonians in the cabinet than Etonians, but I never made it that far.
But then, of course, my colleague tells me that you're actually Northern Irish.
You're
all over the shop.
I was born in Northern Ireland, and I said to my parents, why did you go from Estonia to Northern Ireland to have me there? And they said something like, well, we wanted you to suffer as much as we did. But I loved it. I love Northern Ireland. I love it. They just confuse it a little bit. When I go to Northern Ireland, to Estonia, I speak with a Northern Irish accent. It sounds to them like this. So that's a confusion. But Estonian is my first language, English is my second.
One thing I love about Premier League football is a Scandinavian footballer that's played in Manchester for like 15 years. So it's kind of, half of that kind of Northwest accent and then half Norwegian. It's always a treat, isn't it? Brilliant stuff. Well, we do have lots of people in Northern Ireland watching the show, and it's great to have your company. So I hope you're enjoying your offspring over there, young Lembit. Now, in a world first, a British paraglider has completed an air food delivery with a drone. Greg Harris and his team have been paragliding for years and making visually stunning videos for his YouTube page in the process. But in a recent video, Harris decided to take his parajetting, also known as powered paragliding, to the next level with an in-air food delivery via a high-speed drone. Having ordered a British favourite, a Greggs sausage roll, Harris glided through the sky as the delivery drone whizzed him towards this. Take a look.
So the drone is up. He's going to circle around me so I can get used to it. Here comes Gilo. There he is. This is so strange. Okay. Yeah, I'm ready for you. Yes! 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 First try! First bloody try!
Some people will do anything for a takeaway. Marvellous stuff. Now, this might surprise you. Men who mumble are more attractive to women, according to a study in California, where they clearly have nothing better to do. Speaking less clearly is seen as attractive by women because it's being linked to being macho, it's claimed, like Hollywood heartthrobs Tom Hardy and Marlon Brando, who are famed for their muffled pronunciation. Marlon Brando famously put a cotton wool in his mouth while playing Don Corleone in The Godfather to make himself less intelligible. Men, on the other hand, find clear pronunciations such as Elizabeth Hurley's refined tones attractive in the opposite sex because it indicates, apparently, femininity. So, Lembit, any unusual characteristics you go for in the opposite gender?
It's none of your business, really.
Not really, is it?
I
You've got a rich and colourful romantic CV.
I was thinking about that earlier on.
Is there a through line? Is there a common denominator?
It's a bit of a cheeky question, then. You're thinking it.
You got there first.
Well, I think I'm only seconds ahead of you. I think what I like is effervescence. People who've got character and soul. People who maybe can push me around, push back. The last thing I find in any way attractive is someone who's just got no soul. And we were talking right back earlier in the show about Matt Hancock and Gina, his apparently new partner. The only thing that defines whether that relationship works or any relationship works is whether you've got some kind of frisson.
Yes.
And no one else can tell you if that's going to happen. Mumbling, not mumbling, don't know. It matters more what you mumble than how you mumble it. That's what I think.
Nicely done. Sounds like a song lyric.
ABBA song, maybe.
Sam, you must be very unlucky with the opposite sex because you don't mumble at all. You speak with perfect received pronunciation.
You're too kind.
I assume you're single.
I am single at the moment, but I didn't realise that this was the ultimate factor, so perhaps I should start talking like Marlon Brando from now on. Maybe that will help. But
Actually, that was quite good. That was uncanny, actually.
yeah,
I've got
well,
to say. Yeah. A little bit of Marlon Brando with Coronation Street thrown in.
this can be my party trick. When I'm at dinner, I can bring it out.
Francis, of course, you're profoundly in love at the moment, so you haven't got a dog in the race when it comes to attracting the opposite gender. But, I mean, is there something about you that people always go for?
It was something about me.
What's your special sauce?
What's my alcohol, mate? No. No. I don't know.
On their part, not yours.
Yeah, on their part. No. I guess. Look, I think a big thing is just to be yourself. And I know that sounds cliche and whatever else, but ultimately, when you're having a conversation with someone, you can tell if someone's not being themselves. You can tell if someone's being fake. You can tell if somebody's trying to say the right thing. If someone's actually completely authentic, that's a highly desirable quality.
Yeah, I think so. I think that not trying too hard.
Yeah.
Because I think that people can smell the desperation. They can see it in your eyes.
I feel a bit uncomfortable. Is this a counselling session now?
Well, it's a bit of that, and I'm half chatting you up, Lembit.
Let's get Francis back in. He did so well earlier on.
Can I listen? I want to get to your Greatest Britain and Union Jackass really shortly. Can I just very, very briefly, with the clock against us, touch on this quite remarkable story in The Independent? The Prime Minister, say The Independent, is ready to overrule experts on jabs for teens. All 12 to 15-year-olds could be cleared to receive vaccinations against coronavirus within days after ministers ordered a review that could override the government's immunisation experts. So, Sam, the JCVI have said that giving the jab to 12 to 15-year-olds is not really worth the risks based upon the fact that kids are not threatened seriously by COVID. Is it seriously possible that the Prime Minister would ignore that advice and keep jabbing kids?
I think that the factor from the start, the idea from the start has been more jabs will be better in the long run, right? So if that's the policy, and that's been the policy the whole time, I can see why the Prime Minister has done it, because, you know, perhaps there's a political element to it as well.
Vaccine hesitancy. I mean, the JCVI said, look, we don't recommend jabbing 12-year-olds. And then the government say, we'll do it anyway. I mean, has the world gone mad, Limbit?
Well, I agree with you that the statistics are really worrying. It could be that we make our immune system in some way lazy. And if you do that when you're young, it's just possible. I'm not saying Sam's wrong. It's just possible that there's a problem here. I can summarise my view in a sentence. Give the parents the information, let them make the choice. No way compulsion. Then we end up in a police state.
Sounds like a good shout to me. It's time for this. It's time now to reveal today's Greatest Britain and Union Jackass. And we'll start with you, Sam. Who's your Greatest Britain?
My Greatest Britain is Moeen Ali, the cricketer who's just been made vice-captain. He's had a rough few years. He was dropped from the side in 2019 and took a couple of years out. And he's been brought back. He's helped Joe Root lead the team to wonders in this current tour with India, where we're on top, which no one really expected. And I think he's done very well bowling-wise and batting-wise. And he's apparently very humourful and gets everyone in the team working together. Yeah. Especially without Ben Stokes, without Joss Buttler. Yeah. So I think he's done very well.
That's an absolutely brilliant recommendation. Francis, your Greatest Britain?
My Greatest Britain is actually the JCVI, who actually followed the science, who actually looked at the data and recommended to the government that we shouldn't be jabbing 12-year-olds.
Yes, I mean, can you imagine the Prime Minister overriding this?
Yeah, of course, because look at vaccine passports.
Will there be an outcry?
But look at vaccine passports. The science says that doesn't prevent or stop transmission, yet they're going to crack on with it anyway. So I can absolutely believe it. They haven't been following the science throughout a lot of this pandemic. Why are they going to stop now?
Lembit, your Greatest Britain?
Johanna Valtiainen, the Mayor of Helsinki, for wanting to make that distant outpost of Englishness, Helsinki, an English language city, giving me two options of languages rather than just one.
Look at you show off. Now, what about your Union Jackass?
Extinction Rebellion, for all the reasons I said before. They don't understand the science. They create the irony of increased pollution by holding up traffic in the city. And when you stop to talk with them, they're not really able to engage in the scientific debate. And that really frustrates me completely.
It's a religion now, isn't it? Sam, your Union Jackass?
Is the Vice-Chancellor of Oxford University, who recently said that she was embarrassed Michael Gove went there. And I think this just shows that snobbery is still alive and well within some universities. I mean, his dancing might be appalling, but that's not really enough.
Yeah, I was shocked about that, and I spoke about it
She
in
could be embarrassed about
yesterday's
that.
monologue. He's been a national journalist at the Times newspaper. He's held some of the highest offices of state.
Exactly.
So, I mean, you might disagree with his politics, and you're entitled to, but to be
embarrassment?
embarrassed? No, completely agree with you there. And last but not least, your union jackass, Francis.
Were the Hungarian fans last night
Yes.
in the England match who rained racial abuse on our English players. It's simply unacceptable, and it's a throwback to the dark ages. And well done to especially Raheem Sterling for scoring a goal against them and winding them all up. Well done, Raheem.
Yeah, absolutely right. Listen, it's been a really, really busy show, and I've loved having your company. So many emails and messages.